What is China really like in 2024? But most importantly, what is China going to be like in the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years? Well, I am live on location in one of the most iconic places in all of China. This is Tiananmen Square, and we are visiting on one of the most important days in China's history. Today is October 1st, 2024, and it is the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Now, I've come to Beijing because I want to see what China's story is really like. I want to see and talk to the local people here. China is a rising superpower, and the energy that is felt in this crowd today is a great example of that. And to help tell our story today, I'm bringing in a local Beijing girl. This is Li Jingjing. Jingjing, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
It's so nice to meet you.
So nice to finally meet you in person.
It is so good. So let's go for a little walk and talk, Jing, because
sure.
I really want to understand a lot more about China. You know, I think, you know my story. I first came to China in 2007, and, you know, we saw China at a very different time then. You know, in 2007, for example, China's GDP grew by 14.2%. We saw in 2008, Beijing, the very city that we're in right now, hosting the most spectacular Summer Olympics that were just truly incredible. You know, Shanghai hosts the World Expo in 2010.
Yeah.
But I think China's maturing now, right? China is at a different place than it was that 15, 17 years ago. What do you make of this, seeing so many people around you on October 1st, the national holiday here in China?
I mean, isn't that wonderful? I think maybe only in China you will see so many people are so enthusiastic about watching the flag raising ceremony on the birthday of this country. That shows the spirit, the love of the people of this country for this country, and most of them are young people. So in my 30s, I'm not a local Beijing girl. I was born in Heilongjiang, northern China, but I've been living in Beijing for like 12, 13 years. So you can consider I'm from Beijing now.
Yeah.
But even within my lifetime, I saw dramatic changes of China. It's incredible. I feel like every 10 years, China enters into a new era, new phase. I studied abroad and traveled to different countries, Western countries. And I think for many young people in my generation who have lived or studied abroad, have a short period of, idolizing the Western culture, Western system. So sometimes the young people forget to look at their own culture, their own country. So, but for me, there's a huge different transition period. I always love my country, but I fall in love with my country, my roots, my culture deeply again after I became a journalist, after working as a journalist in China. So I've been working as a journalist in China for 11 years now. And due to this experience, I got the chances to travel to every province, every corner, every village in China. So because of that experience, I got to see the different sides of China. Many young people who stay in big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, they only see the fantastic side of the metropolitans. And people in the cities always complain about, we don't have this or we don't have that. But when I got the chance to see different provinces, I would say the biggest changes, the most dramatic changes, development happened in China in those areas.
So, Jing, when you and I were speaking earlier, you said something very interesting. You said that just because you're born in China doesn't mean that you understand the country.
Yeah.
Right? You really need to go around and travel around. Right? If you go to Beijing and Shanghai, you're going to see the big metropolitan cities. You're going to see the world-class cities. But I mean, how many places have you been in China over the last 11 years?
I think over 20 provinces, but some provinces are so huge, like Tibet and Xinjiang.
Right.
Those provinces itself is so big,
right?
And there are multiple places you have to go.
Right.
So like I've been to Xinjiang like 20 to 30 times, and I've been to many provinces in China, especially deep in the villages. So I totally think being a Chinese born and raised in China doesn't mean you understand China. It's only when I became a journalist and got to travel to different places and talk to all walks of life, talk to people from different ethnic groups, I started to realize how little I knew about China before. This village deep in the mountain that used to have no roads at all, now after 10 years, they have roads leads to each household in the villages.
Right.
I saw like railways being built on high plateaus over 4,000 meters above sea level.
Right.
It's even difficult to breathe. How did people successfully made railways connecting all the villages, bring all the important resources like food, meat to the local people there? You saw the dramatic improvement of people in the rural regions. They got out of the mountains. They no longer are locked deep in the mountains.
Right.
So I think in the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, those people saw the most dramatic improvement in their life. Because of this job, working as a journalist, it gave me so much deeper understanding about my own country, about my own culture. And when you see how it impacts on people's lives, on grassroots people's lives, you start to understand the policies.
Right.
Because maybe before, for most people, poverty alleviation is just a concept, it's a term on textbooks, on news. Maybe they only see the numbers of people being lifted out of poverty, it's just numbers.
Right.
But what those numbers mean, you can really understand it when you go to the villages, see how people used to live in shabby mud-built houses.
Right.
Didn't know where their next meal is. Now they are able to live in comfortable, stable houses. Their children got higher education. Their children got to universities in cities like Beijing,
right.
and they can change their family's life and change their village life. That's how you know. That's how you understand the policy. That's how I grew so much deeper appreciation for the government.
So Jing, there's two facts that I really love about China that I always tell people that I think is so important to understand this new modern China.
Yeah.
Number one is what you hit on, the poverty alleviation.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that over the last 40 years, we've had this economic miracle, 700 million people really lifted out. And like you said, if you're from Shanghai or Beijing, you've seen some progress, but going to those rural villages, those third, fourth, fifth tier cities,
yeah.
where there was no roads, there was no schools. I think that's a lot that people don't understand is how difficult it is to manage a country of 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 4 times the population of the United States. There's 4 times the amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly diverse too, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is in China, there's 300 different dialects. Right? So when you're going to these rural areas, you might even find people that don't even speak Mandarin.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're here in Beijing, obviously we can speak Mandarin here and no problem here, but it's fascinating to see, I remember meetings going to the countryside and, I'm studying Mandarin for so long and then I meet people that don't even speak the language.
Yeah.
And it's just so incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible. The second fact is the poverty alleviation. If you look at the world poverty alleviation, China's, for the last 30 years, China's responsible for 80% of the world's poverty alleviation.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So if you actually take away China's efforts in poverty alleviation, you actually would see the world would have regressed. The world would have gotten more poor.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we're actually seeing that in Western countries today. I think we're seeing the last 5 years, especially with the pandemic, we're seeing that Western countries are being very strapped. More people are closer to the poverty side than they are getting wealthy.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of effects on the economy. But that being said, I want to talk to you about the Chinese economy.
I'm not an economist, probably, right. But I can give you some my personal stories and stories I saw while traveling to different places, talking to different people.
Right.
So I'm in my 30s.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my family lived in Hebei province, Heilongjiang province. So when I was a kid, there was no running water in our houses.
Okay.
There was no flushing toilets in our houses.
Right.
Imagine, that's something not that common back in China 30 years ago,
right.
20 years ago. But now, you see, Shanghai, Beijing, huge metropolitans. We have everything. We have the cutting-edge technologies.
Right.
And all of the e-bags, share bags, Alipay, WeChat Pay didn't exist.
Right.
10 years ago.
Of course.
I remember 10 years ago when I started working in Beijing, electric cars was a joke. Everybody was like, oh, electric cars are going nowhere. No one wants to invest in electric cars. No one wants to apply for a plate for electric cars.
Right.
But now you see, I went to visit some factories of EV makers. The cars are amazing.
Right.
The technology is amazing. Not only the batteries, the driving, everything, and also the equipment with karaoke and all this basic stuff.
Right.
So the technology of EVs revolutionized. Now China is the leading EV maker.
Right.
That happened just within 10 years.
Right.
So that's how much changes it happens every year.
Right.
We didn't have high-speed rails when I was a kid. When I was in my teenager time, I had to go to another province to see my parents.
Right.
I need to take a long railway, a day and a night, to go to a neighboring province. But now it only takes 3 hours.
Right.
And Xinjiang, this vast region, now has over 27 airports.
Wow.
So that's basic infrastructure that populates across China in every provinces is a crucial drive to drive the economy. Products of those villages can get out. Business people can go to the villages, and the villagers can get out to get education for more job opportunities.
Yeah.
That's some like concrete examples of how it changes. But in terms of the economy, I know a lot of Western media now saying China is going to collapse, China's economy is not doing great. They want to see China collapse very soon.
Right.
But you know, the economy growth is slowing.
Right.
But so is entire world's economy.
Right.
But the most important thing is China's economy is transitioning to a new period.
Right.
In the past 40 years, China's economy, GDP grow rapidly, but you cannot have like rapid growth all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Now China is transitioning to pay attention to quality.
Right.
We need to have high quality. And second, we need to have the cutting edge innovation and technology.
Right.
So this is the thing that China is paying attention to. We cannot just have numbers.
Right.
We need to have quality.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of investment in technology, innovation. And also China is now saying, well, the biggest contradiction we are facing is the inequality between regions, but also between the rich and poor. So now China is focusing on how to make it more equal for people, make the less developed region in the northwest China catching up with the east, and also the rich people cannot get too rich. You need to contribute to the society to make sure everybody can catch up. Right. So this is the focus of China in this phase. During China's development, China experienced many challenges economically.
Right.
In the 80s, in the 90s, in 2000, but China overcome it successfully. And look at China now. China still is leading in GDP, in technology. So I have all the confidence in China's economy because the policies always paying attention to how to solve the challenges in different periods. And you know what? I think something very inspiring is China is the only developing country in the global south that escaped the Western's neo-colonialism's trap, which is to lock this developing country at the bottom of global value chain. If you talk to people from Africa, from Latin America, they will tell you the same thing. Why these regions, many of the regions are facing challenges like poverty, of inequality, because of neo-colonialism, lock them at the bottom of global value chain. Make sure they only provide cheap materials for the industrial world. Make sure they consume the obsolete technology of the industrial world. Everything they produce is low value added,
right,
and they consume the high value added products from the global north. But China escaped that. China is able to be self-reliant on technology, on food, on fuel, on manufacturing. That's a miracle.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring to many global south fellows. They're saying, how did China make it? How did China escape this trap? So that's why a lot of global south countries are looking like what China did. They want to learn from China, and they want to join the Belt and Road Initiative together to escape this trap. The concrete results we are living in every day. I'm very confident about the country's future.
So Jing, I think you brought up some really interesting stuff there, and we're right next to the Great Hall of the People.
Yeah.
And I believe that just a few weeks ago, China hosted it was like the China-Africa Forum.
Yes.
Right? And so this was quite an amazing event because you had 53 leaders from all 53 countries from Africa,
yeah,
coming here. And I think you really hit on that is this Belt and Road Initiative. You see countries in the Global South. And for everybody that doesn't know the Global South, it's Latin America. We're talking Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East. And that's about 85% of the population of the world,
yeah,
is in the Global South. And we're seeing a huge shift. We're seeing the Global South is really partnering with China. You touched on the EVs. Well, the EVs now have a dominant presence all throughout Latin America, right? You talk about Chinese technology and the shift towards innovation and quality, right? We look at like the Huawei phone. I think it has a 60, 70% market share in Africa. For example, in the United States, my home country, our politicians are wanting to ban Chinese products, saying, we don't want Chinese EVs, we're going to put 100% tax on them. We don't want Chinese phones like Huawei because potentially they could be used as, spying or things like that. But other countries around the world, I think even the grid, like the 4G grid throughout Africa, that's all built by Huawei, right? Like China's built all of this. So what's really interesting to see for me as an American, Jing, is that America, we tend to really just focus on, a few countries. We look at Canada, we look at the EU, Japan and Australia and New Zealand. And that's kind of the world for most Americans. They forget about the global south. China knows what it's like to be a very poor, underdeveloped country, right? I mean, we're on the 75th anniversary of China's founding, but if we go back 50 years ago, right, China's one of the poorest countries in the world.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it was the most populated country in the world. So you're talking about real pressure there from the government saying, we have to figure this out, right? We've got to, how are we going to take care of this many people? And of course, that was through economic reform. Guys like Deng Xiaoping coming in, opening up the country. Obviously, a very fruitful relationship with the United States. One where I think helped Chinese people because, you had companies like Apple would come here, manufacture their products, but also it helped Americans out. America, we got incredibly rich off of China.
Yeah.
Right? And I think this is
win-win,
it's
cooperation.
Right, it's a win-win, and that's why my channel is dedicated always to seeking a win-win partnership, knowing that America, we have a booming economy because of China, and China had a booming economy because of America, and if we can have more of these win-win situations, I think is the best. But Jing, I want to say, your English is so fantastic. You have such a great command of the English language, but I know that you spent time abroad, right? You have a master's degree from the UK.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of shift the focus here. I want to talk a little bit about, your experiences abroad. And I want to understand, you speak great English. You have, I'm sure, opportunities as a journalist to go abroad. Why are you choosing to be in Beijing?
Thank you for your compliment, but I'm not rare among my peers. There are so many outstanding, talented young Chinese are good at speaking Chinese, good at speaking English, Arabic, Spanish, French, Swahili, Hindu, Pashtun. You'll be amazed how talented these young generations of Chinese are. I feel a little bit shy while I was among this talented young Chinese. I'm like, oh my God, my English cannot compare to you. So I'm just one of the many, many very talented young Chinese. Many top universities in China, in Beijing, Shanghai, in Guangzhou, to give lectures to journalist students who want to pursue a journalist job in the future. So when I interact with these college students who are in their 20s or 19, I always surprised at their level of intellect. They are so smart, multi-talented, speak fluent English, already studied or lived or traveled to multiple continents, South Pole, many European countries, North America. They are so well-traveled, have insights of the world. So they already beat me. They are much smarter than me when I was their age. I achieved this probably in my late 20s, but they already achieved it in 19. I'm sure this generation younger than me are gonna be much more smarter. Maybe in my generation or the older generation like before me, when they talk about abroad, they only look at the United States, Europe, this traditional developed Western countries. But now this young generation have a world view. I remember one of my friends who is from Iraq, when he gave lectures to university in Beijing, some of the students' Arabic level shocked him. It's like, this Chinese student is so good at Arabic. And one of the students came up to him and tell him, well, not only am I learning Arabic, I'm also learning Swahili because I want to go to Africa.
Wow.
So many young people are studying Global South, studying Africa, studying West Africa. They have a dream of contributing to the world. This young generation, because they grew up in a much more developed China, so they look at all this well-developed Western countries as equals. Maybe people in the 60s or 70s, they look up to the West, they look up to the United States. Whatever the US do is right. But now it's completely shifted in China.
Wow, okay.
Young generations have much more confidence in their own culture. The most enthusiastic people who are trying to revive Asian and Chinese cultures, like the clothes from different dynasties, how to do certain things in the Asian, different Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, Ming Dynasty. The group are revitalizing this culture are the young Chinese.
Jingjing, I've seen that like on Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, right? It's a lot of the young ladies wearing like the hanfu, right?
Yeah.
Right, and it's the old dynasty, like this be 100, 200 years old, you know, even potentially older, and these are the ones that are recording on social media, right? Like wearing the traditional Chinese. So I think you're seeing like the youth of China kind of coming back and really embracing their roots. And do you think that the youth of today are more patriotic than other generations?
I feel so. As a journalist, I interacted with a lot of people. I went to many universities. From my observation, I think the young generations, younger than me, who were born in the 90s, in the 2000s, are much more confident about Chinese culture, have the goal of revitalize Chinese culture. I mean, they're the one that's most enthusiastic.
Right.
They are the one in every front. Take at the Olympic game as example, at the Paris Olympic Games. You see the different attitude among this generation of young Chinese people. They are unyielding. They speak good languages, English and Chinese. They dare to confront unfair treatment. Right. They will call out the bullshit that some racist Westerners give them, and they always aim for, and they enjoy the game. Right. They aim for the gold medal. I remember Zheng Qinwen, the Queen Wen, who won the first gold for female gold for tennis at Olympics. After she won, she said, you know, what kept me going is the spirit of getting a gold medal for China. She always, in any interview, she says, you know, keep being good, keep being excellent. I want to make China proud. I want to make Chinese young people proud. So this is the spirit of young Chinese people. They are so proud of our culture.
We saw that at the Paris Olympics, or many of you know, I think the superstar of the games, Pan Zhanle, right? I mean, this kid is I think he's 19, 20 years old.
He turned 20 when he was at the Olympics.
Yeah, so I mean, 20-year-old kid, I mean, he set numerous world records, and it was incredible because he broke the 40-second barrier, and unfortunately a lot of Westerners immediately came out and accused him of being a cheater and that he doped. And then actually, if you go back and look at that, he's broken that 40-second barrier, you know, almost 6 or 7 times before. So it was not something new. But you know, I mean, it just shows you, and I love what you said, is that this new generation of Chinese, you know, traditional Chinese culture is one of non-confrontation, right? You would not confront somebody. You would be very quiet. You don't want to lose face. But I mean, he really came out in the press conference and he said, you know, these American and these Australians, they were not kind to me. You know, and I'm not going to take that. And then he came out and won the gold medal. And I mean, that must have just been an incredible moment for China.
And actually, he also did it in a very polite way. He told the journalist, "Oh, can I say this?"
That's right. I saw that.
Can I say this? But like the Australian swimmers and like American swimmers, like kind of like look down upon us. But you know, the swimmers were his idols.
That's right.
They were his heroes. And then when they see the heroes just totally ignoring them. So like it's heartbreaking. But you know, what he did is just like, okay, I'm just gonna beat you all in the swimming pool.
So Jing, another thing that's really interesting is we're seeing this technology race between the United States and China. Here on the ground this week in Beijing, I saw a new article released that Huawei has released this new microchip that is going to be on par with NVIDIA's A100. So the NVIDIA A100 is the most advanced microchip in the world, and China is now sending out samples of its version, which they claim can actually compete with NVIDIA. And if this is true, which they're going to be doing this testing these next couple of months to verify, then that means that China has now caught up with the United States as far as microchip technology. And to fill everybody in on the backstory, I mean, this has been a war that's been going on for 2 or 3 years now. The United States actively trying to block China's access to technology. But Jing, when America forces China in the corner and you have this country full of people, I mean, it's really a bad strategy, because I think, is it not the biggest motivation for Chinese to, well, like we say in Chinese, is to 想办法, right? Like you're going to think of a solution. Right?
I think it happened to China many times in terms of many things. Maybe you can slow China's progress for a few years, but China gonna develop this technology by themselves. It may be more challenging. It probably will be take a few more years, but they can make it. Take a look at the China space station.
Right.
Well, NASA blocked China's access to their knowledge But now we don't need your knowledge anymore.
Right.
So,
and to fill everybody in, I think the International Space Station will be decommissioned by 2030, which means that in just a few short years, China will have the only working space station in the entire planet, or in the entire universe. And already the United States has asked if they can participate in that. So it's kind of a double standard we see, right? Chinese astronauts aren't welcome to compete, but once in 6 years, China will have the only space station.
So I think this just keeps telling us that it's so important to be self-reliant. In the past few decades, we experienced many kind of those sanctions, blockade, but eventually the country successfully made it. So, well, right now it's too late to stop China's growth.
And Jing, I want to ask you one final question as we finish up today's interview. I know that you've been to the United States and see that it is a superpower, but you're also a local Chinese that has been able to experience this firsthand, China's rise. How do you look at the United States, and what is your view towards the U.S.-China relationship?
I'm sure for most Chinese people like me, we appreciate the best culture and knowledge from both countries. We love Chinese culture. We also appreciate the best American culture and technology and education. From my English accent, I also learned this English from Hollywood movies and TV dramas. So most of us know a lot about America's culture and history. I wonder how many American young people know the same about China. So that's the thing. I've been to the United States several times. When I talk to the young people in America, most people either know nothing about China or only know the very, very negative but misinformation about China. So I feel the young Chinese know much more about America than Americans know about China. So now, of course, we are in this competition, but seriously, people don't want these tensions. People don't want this competition. And especially Chinese people, we really want the win-win cooperation, because I'm sure the both countries, if they work together, the benefits will benefit people in both countries. But the sad thing is, right now the relationship between this country, I think, depends on the leadership of America, how they make their policy. If they continue to add tariffs on China's products, start trade wars on China, and try to block China from certain areas, so how can you develop? How can you cooperate? I think the future of this country really depends on the leadership in America. How would they see China? China is not a country they should contain. You can contain no country. China will develop and rise, and China has no interest in being a hegemon, like some strategists think. China's rise peacefully without conquering, without colonizing other countries. So I really hope that both countries can work. But maybe next, what I'm thinking about the US is US internal affairs, but it's my 2 cents. Because in the past 10 years I traveled to United States, I saw how the economy declined, how it impacted on the working class and the people. For example, I saw so many drug users and homeless people on the streets in San Francisco, so much crimes and gun violence. Those things don't exist in China at all.
Right.
It was so scary for us as a Chinese tourists. This is so scary. You go to the rich neighborhood, the rich people have a super rich and nice life. Right. So how can one country be so divided? The rich people living a luxurious life, the poor people are being marginalized, died on the street, became homeless on the street, no one cares about them. So this inequality, this instability will be a time bomb in the society. If a government doesn't solve these issues, eventually it will cause some internal conflicts. That's my 2 cents, because everything is because of economy thing. If I've been to some least developed countries, I don't see that level of homeless people. I don't see that level of crimes that I saw in America.
As I sit back and reflect on my recent visit to Beijing, I'm incredibly grateful I had the opportunity to visit Tiananmen Square on China's national holiday. We started early in the morning, joining tens of thousands of Chinese on the walk to one of China's most famous sites, and the energy displayed by the locals was truly amazing. People of all ages, from young children to senior citizens, visited the square, with many of them holding Chinese flags and displaying an immense sense of pride for how fast and how far their nation has come in the past few decades. I want to thank Li Jingjing for making a special appearance in today's episode. I hope you enjoyed her insights as a local Chinese journalist who has dedicated her career to helping more people around the world understand the real China. If you've never been to China and made it to this point in the video, I know you have a deep interest in China, and I encourage you to visit, because China is unlike anything you've seen in Western media, and there's no better place to start than a visit to the beautiful capital of Beijing.